I've been wanting to make this video for a while now. I've said before that I do believe in extraterrestrials. I do believe that intelligent life does exist in other parts of the universe. There's so many clues out there that seems to point to the fact that we are not alone. So if you do believe that alien life exists, you have to wonder, have they visited us before? Have they visited this planet before we invented things like cameras and start taking super blurry photos of them in their spaceships? I mean, it would make sense, right? Why would they start visiting us now and not thousands of years before? So here are some interesting clues that I found that may be proof of ancient aliens. And I'm not saying that everything in this video is definitely 100% related to aliens. I mean, everyone's got their own opinions. All I'm saying is that keep an open mind and judge for yourself. Number 1. Battle over Nuremberg, Germany. In this 16th century woodcut, a printer named Hans Glaser depicted a strange event that occurred in the wee hours of April 14th, 1561 in the city of Nuremberg, Germany. The woodcut shows a bunch of strange-looking objects in the sky in a very chaotic pattern, and it came with a description which I'm going to summarize for you guys. It says that in the morning of April 14th, 1561, between 4 and 5 a.m., a dreadful apparition occurred on the sun and was witnessed by a lot of people. Strange rods and globe-shaped objects appeared flying and fighting in the sky for over an hour, and many of these objects fell from the sky and crashed and burned on the ground. Skeptics try to describe the account as actually figurative, and it's just describing a solar phenomenon such as a sundog. Or maybe it could be that billiard balls got sick of always being smacked around and decided to fight back. Personally, I think that's more plausible than a sundog, because here's a picture of a sundog, and I don't think this looks anything like what was described. Number 2, the Paracas Skulls. In 1928, Julio Tello, a famous Peruvian archaeologist, found more than 300 very strange looking skulls in a mass grave on the southern coast of Peru, about 4 hours south of Lima. Now take a look at these skulls. They basically look like something from the Alien or Conehead movies. Researchers declared this find the most extreme case of dolichocephaly or skull elongation ever found. Skull elongation is practiced in some ancient cultures where people would purposely deform their heads by having wood tied to their heads when they were infants, and over the years the shape of their heads would change. But here's the thing, this method can only change the shape of the skull and not the size. And some of the skulls found by Tello were over 25% larger and 60% heavier than a normal human skull. Now here's what's even more crazy about this finding. According to Discovery News, Brian Forster, who is the director of the Paracas History Museum, sent hair, teeth, and bone samples from 5 of the skulls to a lab for DNA testing. And the conclusion was the mitochondrial DNA presented mutations unknown to any man, primate, or any other animal. The mutations suggested we are dealing with a completely new human-like being, very distant from Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, or Denisovans. So basically, this is either some crazy new species of humans we did not know existed, or it may not be from this world. Number 3, ancient cave paintings. It's pretty common to see drawings of UFOs or what we think aliens might look like nowadays, but what if these drawings were from thousands or even tens of thousands of years ago? For example, paintings were found in caves near the town of Sharama, India that seem to depict UFOs and extraterrestrials, and some of them, like this one here, really does look like something a kid would draw if you tell him or her to draw a space robot. According to the India Times, local villagers have passed down a story through the generations that talks about the Rohilla people, or the small-sized ones who came down from the sky in round-shaped objects. They would take 1 or 2 villagers away, and these villagers would never return. So maybe the first documented instances of alien abduction? According to archaeologist J.R. Bhagat, the paintings are done in natural colors that have hardly faded despite the years. The strangely carved figures are seen holding weapon-like objects and do not have clear features. Especially the nose and mouth are missing. In few pictures, they are even shown wearing spacesuits. We can't refute possibility of imagination by prehistoric men, but humans usually fancy such things. Of course, this is just one of many cave paintings that seem to show visitors from another world. Here's a painting from 10,000 BC in a cave in Italy that seemed to show two people in spacesuits. Here's another one from 13,000 BC found in a cave in France that could either be a rain cloud, a flying saucer, or the earliest version of Space Invaders. Number 4, ancient structures we still can't figure out. We all know about the pyramids in Egypt and Stonehenge, and we see them more as tourist attractions, but if you dig a bit deeper, you'll find how amazingly mysterious these and many other structures in the world are, to the point where we are still trying to figure out how exactly they were created. For example, let's talk about the ruins of Pumapunku, located in Bolivia at an elevation of over 12,000 feet. No one really knows what the structure was for, what it used to look like, why, or when it was built. Some researchers think it was built 2,000 years ago, some think it was built 17,000 years ago. What we do know is that this structure was built by those who had access to knowledge and perhaps even tools that could rival modern-day humans. The massive stone blocks that make up the structure were cut with precision but bear no chisel marks and fitted together so well that you couldn't even wedge a needle between them. Today, this would require very sharp tools and perhaps even laser cutting to achieve. Then comes the question of how these stones were actually transported, because some of these blocks weighed around 150 tons and the nearest source for these stones were over 6 miles away, with some stones transported from around 50 miles away. Now, 6 miles may not sound very far, but keep in mind the elevation and the fact that they had to get it up a steep incline in time where horses were not used in that region and the elevation was above the natural tree line, so logs were likely also not used. There are many structures like this in the world, such as the Nazca Lines and the Moai on Easter Island, and we can only guess, but really we have no idea how these were created back then, because some of these structures are even hard to accomplish today. Number 5, UFOs in classic paintings. When I was doing the video on secrets in famous artworks, I came across a lot of classic paintings that seem to depict UFOs. For example, check out this 15th century work attributed to artist Domenico Ghirlandaio that now hangs in the Palazzo Vecchio and depicts Mary, the mother of Jesus, with her hands folded, looking down at the babies. But what's strange is that over her shoulder, we can see something floating in the sky that kind of looks like some sort of a flying object that is either spiny like a porcupine or is radiating off light. And if you look closer, you can see that there is a man on the ground looking up at the strange object and shielding his eyes from either the sun or the light the object is emitting. And there is also a dog with his mouth open that could be actually barking at the object. Some say it's actually representative of God, and all Ghirlandaio's paintings showcase people shielding themselves from the glory of God. But of course, no one knows for sure. Now let's take a look at this. The Crucifixion of Christ is a 14th century fresco hanging above the altar at the Vysoki Decay Monastery in Kosovo. The painting has something strange about it that kind of stood out, and that is the two spaceship looking things near the top of the painting. Here you see what kind of looks like two speeding spaceships with pilots inside of them, and one of them, the pilot in the Sputnik looking spaceship on the right, seemed to be looking back at the other ship. Many say these two images are actually the sun and the moon, and many paintings of the crucifixion done in the Byzantine style will commonly show the sun and moon on each side with faces turned to witness the crucifixion. But to me, this thing really does look like a spacecraft, and if you look closely, the pilots even seem to be holding some sort of control stick. There are others who say during that time Christianity would not have personified the sun and the moon, as that would have been blasphemous. These are just two of many classic paintings I found that seem to depict some sort of weird object in the sky. So if you want to see more, I'll find some and put the link in my description box. Personally, I believe that aliens do exist, and in the video coming up next week, I'm actually going to talk about how researchers finally updated the famous Drake equation and came to the conclusion that the odds of humans being alone in the universe are about 1 in 10 billion trillion. So if advanced alien beings do exist, why couldn't they have made contact with humans hundreds or thousands or even tens of thousands of years ago? You know, I think that's actually smarter, because back then people would see them as gods because they came down from the sky, and now people would just be scared and probably try to shoot them. But these are just some really interesting information I found that I thought you would enjoy. So thank you all so much for watching this video. I'll see you later.